This is the understanding. You are machines made out of proteins. The proteins move in response to the signals. The signals are controlled by the membrane, which reads the signals and then adjusts the body by sending signals to the body to respond to the environment. That the environmental signals are perceptions by definition. You saw it. Awareness of the environment through physical sensation is perception. But then, as we also saw, perception may not be accurate. And when a perception is not accurate, then it's really a belief more than a perception. And the bottom line is this. The conclusion is that beliefs run the genes. And we know this in many cases, especially people that have terminal cancer. The only ones that can really get out of that pronouncement of death are the people who do what? Change their entire belief system and say, I'm not buying that story. I'm out of here. I'm going out to live my life. And when they do, they take control of their life. And guess what? They start to manifest a remission and more health through the process. So the bottom line is, the truth is you are not genetically controlled, but you're controlled by your perceptions. Now, when I extend this in the next half, what I'm going to extend on and talk about is simply this. The signals that are in the environment are not just physical signals, as materialistic Newtonian biologists believe. That energy is equally valuable in eliciting biological systems, and I'll demonstrate that, as well as molecules. I will also start to talk about the role of parents in conscious parenting, because the belief of the parents is now recognized to select the genes in the fetus. That if you were a parent or you were once a baby, then that would be very important to you for the following reason. It reveals that the life that we express today was very, very much shaped by the belief of our parents. And I'll talk about that, and then the most important part, how belief can rewrite your genes, and I will show you the science of that when we come back from the short break. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for staying. I know it's getting later, but we'll try and finish this, because this is, as Doug said, this is the most relevant part, because once we understand how the machine works, now let's talk about how the machine is programmed to work, and this becomes more relevant for us. And I said there are several things I'm going to talk about, but the first one I want to talk about is what I call assumption number one, and that is the one that said biological processes employ Newtonian physics. And we talked about that, and what we said is that Newtonian mechanisms are based on the universe being a matter machine, so that all you have to study is the matter, that it's a complex machine that if you take it apart and study the pieces, then you can understand how the complex machines works by looking at all the individual pieces. And then by being able to do that, you should be able to create new pieces and control the expression of the machine. Remember, that was the mission statement of science, to control and dominate nature. Well, that means the ability to understand how the machine works and then replace the parts. Well, the issue about that is revealed in this article, which was in Science. This is a mainstream journal, conventional biomedical journal, and I'll read it for you in case you can't see it. And it says, but perhaps the biggest challenge to reductionism, the concept of taking it apart and looking at it, it says, but perhaps the biggest challenge to reductionism comes from the concept of information. Remember, information are signals, okay? The signals that control. And here's what I'm going to emphasize it now. It says, in biology, information is carried and received by molecules, which is fully consistent with the reductionist principles of physics and chemistry. The point it says is this, that in biology, information is only in the molecules. If it's only in the molecules, then to adjust your body, I provide you with new molecules, and there, of course, is the foundation of the pharmaceutical industry, to make new molecules to adjust your body. But the issue is information only carried in molecules? Well, in old-fashioned Newtonian physics it is, but not in our new physics. The old Newtonian mechanism said the universe was made out of matter. It's just like a machine. But in 1925, we reestablished a new view of how the universe works. And it says this, that in quantum mechanics, the universe is actually made out of energy. What you look at as physical matter at the very atomic structure doesn't physically exist. That the atoms are not real physical at all. Even though I can show you an electron micrograph of atoms, they're pairs of atoms where the arrows are indicating right there. Here's an interesting truth. If I take a camera and start to get closer and closer and closer to that atom, that actually I could go all the way through the atom from one side to the other side and not see anything. The closer you get to the atom, the less you see. And the reason is this, that the atom is not physical. The atom is a vortex of energy. So inside the atom is nothing real structural. So we're familiar with the atom on the left, the Newtonian atom. All of us saw it, marbles, ball bearings going around like solar systems and all that. But here's the atom of today, the quantum atom. And it's not missing, it's actually there. But the issue is a quantum atom has no physical structure to it. But the energy behaves as matter in an atom. But so the point about it is this. The world of medicine is based on Newtonian mechanics. It's based on materialism. But in quantum mechanics, it says matter isn't the end point. Energy is the end point. According to quantum physics, you can never understand the universe if you don't incorporate the role of energy in the process, because energy shapes matter. Number two, the concept of reductionism. Sure, I can study atoms, how they connect to each other, and look at that as physical atoms, but the point is, atoms are not like marbles. Here's the edge of this marble, here's the edge of that marble. I can say this marble is separated from this marble, but the reality is this. They're energy. There are no edges to them. So this atom and this atom are always touching and entangled with each other. The atoms that are in your body are energy waves that are involved with the energy all around you as well. You cannot get out of the energy field. There is no way to study an individual without studying the energy. So the concept of reductionism gives way to this new understanding which biology is beginning to adjust to. It's called holism. It says everything is entangled. I can't just look at one little part and say that part is wrong, because that part is connected to all the other parts. So the bottom line is this. We're pulling back. Rather than looking at reductionism, we're pulling back and looking at holism. How your health is not just a matter of the physical structure in here. How your health is related, it's related to the environment and how you fit into the environment. So a doctor or a health practitioner much concerned about how actions in your family dynamics, community dynamics, work dynamics, because all of those are contributing to the functional structure of your own body. So the fact is, looking at little things and blaming little points has been an error, because we now recognize that reductionism is not the way of seeing science. It's holism. And then, of course, the concept of determinism falls out completely, because you can't ever determine all the interacting events that lead to a process. And the result is, actually, there's a theory in quantum physics, not a theory, it's a principle called the principle of uncertainty by Heisenberg. And it says the more accurate you try to measure something, other parameters of that disappear, so that you can never actually determine anything. So we've tried to live best we can, but we can't ever really come to that belief of controlling in fullest how we live on this planet. I bring this paper up, Detecting Individual Atoms and Molecules with Lasers. Every atom or molecule emits and absorbs light of characteristic wavelengths. That's the first line under the title. What does it mean? Every atom and molecule emits energy. In other words, every atom is vibrating and giving off an energy frequency. But not only that, every atom is also receiving energy. So every atom or molecule in your body is not only giving off energy, but it's receiving energy, and the energy it receives will alter its expression. So what does that mean at the level of the atom? Well, let me step in front of this and show you this. If I stand here, and if you can see my hand, and let's say that the red side of this nucleus, this is a theoretical model of an atom. We're still using the physical structure right now. Let's say the red side of the nucleus is negative, and the green side is positive. If I put a voltmeter over at this side of the atom, what am I going to read, positive or negative? Okay, did I say the red side was positive? What did I say? Red is positive. So what am I going to read over here? Positive. And if I read it on the other side, what is it going to be? Negative. If I read it at the middle, between both of them, think about it for a second, what's the answer? Neutral, because it's between both. Well, the fact is, yes, if I move the voltmeter all the way around, I'll get different voltages. But here's the truth. The atoms actually move themselves, so that I don't have to move them around. The atoms are spinning. Oops, let me go back. I'll go back to that one again. The atoms are spinning, and as they spin, if I put a voltmeter out of here, then what's it going to do? Positive and negative. Color is positive and negative. So what am I reading? Positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. If I attach a voltmeter, it looks like that. If I now get a printout of the voltmeter, what does it look like? Then you see this wave, that there's positive and negative, and they vibrate at different frequencies. Each atom has a unique characteristic vibrational frequency, and it broadcasts this because the energy is not held at the edge like here, but the energy travels throughout the environment. So when we read an atom, In the old days, in our chemistry books, remember we had atomic mass and atomic structure and, the density of atoms. Now, in the new quantum physics books, when you read about an atom, you read about its electrical charges. Its volts. Atoms are measured by volts. And so what we're looking at is atoms have waves of frequency energy, so each atom vibrates at a frequency. So it's not only emitting a frequency, but atoms can also absorb frequency because energy can be absorbed by other energy. So when we look at this spectrum, this is what we saw in our chemistry books when we went to high school, an atomic spectrum here. So I have different molecules, hydrogen, helium, mercury, uranium, and little color bars. But colors are frequencies. They're vibrational frequencies. What does it say? It says that each atom has a unique frequency vibrational signature that separates it from other atoms. That's how we can tell the composition of planets and stars, because if we read the light emitted from them, the light can be interpreted as to the composition of the planet. So we can read frequency and understand matter through the frequency. Well, the relevance about this is in this picture right here. This is a breast scan. And the question is this: am I actually looking at a picture of the breast, yes or no? Is this an actual photograph of a breast? No, it's an image of the breast. What is it an image of? It's an energy spectrum. And it's interesting. Medicine doesn't recognize the role of energy, but uses all the new quantum physics devices derived to read energy. So PET scans, CAT scans, EMI, the MRIs, all those kinds of technologies work on what? Reading the energy. So the relevance is this. They understand that the CAT scan will pick out the tissue there in the center where a cancer is. Well, why do I know that that's a cancer tissue? And the answer is the energy emitted by those cells is different than all the other energy. So when I do an energy scan, I can start to see the character of the cells by the energy they are emitting. Well, what's the relevance? And the answer is this. Conventional medicine would then see this and say, well, then what I have to do is go inside there physically, cut out that bad tissue and remove the bad tissue, only using the energy process for diagnostics. But the bottom line is this, as we showed in the slide about atoms, not only do they emit energy, but they absorb energy. So the interesting part is, rather than physically going in there, it is then possible to put the energy back in to adjust the energy of the cells rather than to destroy the cells. And so the fact is, in the process of healing energies, and we've heard about it for a long time, people emit energies, and that these energies influence the cells. And so the reality is that whether medicine wants to own it or not, physics automatically says you cannot deny the reality that physical matter radiates energy and absorbs energy, and by absorbing energy, I can change the structure of the matter. So the fact is, it's better and a longer understanding and a far better way off for all of us, rather than getting in our bodies and cutting it open and cutting pieces out, to understand by redirecting the energy back into the body, you can entrain cells that are not at the right energy to adapt and adopt the right energy, and therefore do healing without cutting out the tissue itself. Well, how can that work? How can I send energy in and affect matter? Well, most of you have seen or heard about somebody like Ella Fitzgerald, a vocalist who can sing a certain note, and at that certain time, when that note is heard, a crystal goblet will explode. People are familiar with the breaking glass with singing? How does it work? And it works like this. The crystal, the atoms, are all vibrating, just like I showed you. They're all spinning and they're vibrating at a certain frequency. So if I say that they're vibrating in here at a frequency X, all the atoms, even though they're all in structure making the shape of the crystal goblet, they're connected to each other by atomic bonds, but they're each individually vibrating where they are, like this. They're all hanging, but they still maintain the structure. Now I take a tuning fork, and it's tuned to the same frequency that the atoms are. And when I hit that tuning fork, the energy of the tuning fork radiates out. And if the atoms are complementary, harmonically resonant, that's the word, complementary, harmonically resonant with the tuning fork, then the atoms will absorb the energy, just like it said in that paper. All atoms emit and absorb energy. So if I tune the energy of the tuning fork to match the energy of the atoms, remember the atoms are just like this, but what happens if the tuning fork gives them extra energy and they absorb it? What happens to their movement? It goes faster and boom! The point is, what happens is, the tuning fork causes the goblet not to break. In reality, if you see a photograph of it, the goblet doesn't break. the goblet explodes. Why? Because all the atoms are vibrating now with so much extra energy they can't hold on to each other, and then the structure is completely gone. So this is a reality, that energy affects matter. And in fact, in medicine, they're actually using this in one process. Remember the kidney stones that get in your kidney? You have to pass them. That's the old way. What's the new way? Well, the kidney stones are crystals. And if they're crystals, the atoms vibrate at a certain frequency. So what the new procedure is, rather than passing the kidney stone, they put a probe up that broadcasts like a frequency, like a focus tuning fork, with the exact frequency of the kidney stone. And what happens to the kidney stone? The same thing that happens to the goblet. It explodes. And all of a sudden, you don't have to worry. Now all you got to pass is a little sand, but not the whole rock along with it. So it's a lot easier in that process. But the question is, does this apply to biology? And the answer is, of course, and it works like this. Here's a tuning fork. There's a protein receptor with an antenna on it. The antenna vibrates at a certain frequency. Now, the antennas generally respond, as conventional medicine says, to molecules, which is true, because molecules have their own frequency, as it said in that slide, and when the molecule is present, if it vibrates at the same frequency as the receptor, then the receptor will vibrate when the molecule vibrates, and when the receptor vibrates, it will go from conformation 1 to conformation 2 as a result of responding to that vibrational energy. So the bottom line is what we expect is this. I hit the tuning fork, and then the receptor, which is in conformation A, begins to absorb the energy, and in the result changes the shape of the protein, the structure of, the assembly of the backbone, how it's organized, changes that, and then the receptor goes to conformation B or 2 at this particular case. So the point is this. The receptors, which, remember what the function of the receptors are? They're the ones that signal the process. That the receptors not only respond to molecules, but the receptors respond to energy. Well, if they respond to energy, then why is my medical doctor not talking about energy? Because I, as a medical professor, never taught them that in the first place. Why? Because when I was teaching medical doctors, that was not part of our understanding. And yet, since my research started taking me that way, I realized something, that there's been papers in the literature that have been in there for 50 or 100 years, over and over again, in the hard-stream, main core scientific journals, papers about what? Electromagnetic fields affecting every level of cell biology. The paper in the upper left, electromagnetic fields, the effect on DNA synthesis. There are certain electromagnetic fields that turn on DNA synthesis, other fields that shut it off. The one on the right, pulsing electromagnetic fields induce cellular transcription. That means RNA synthesis. So there are electromagnetic frequencies that turn on RNA synthesis and turn off RNA synthesis. The bottom one, exposure of salivary gland cells to low-frequency electromagnetic fields alters polypeptide, protein synthesis. So what's the point? These are mainstream medical journals. What do they say? That the energy in the environment can activate all of the main functions of a cell, DNA synthesis, RNA synthesis, and protein synthesis. More than that, these papers also show, like the one in the upper left, that I can get blood vessels to differentiate, grow, and form blood vessels by putting them in electromagnetic fields, just putting the cells in the field. Or I can get mononuclear blood cells, the upper one on the right, to start to divide, mitosis, in the field. The electromagnetic fields can cause them to divide. Why is that relevant? When mononuclear cells start to divide out of control, that's called leukemia. So in other words, I can induce leukemia in an electromagnetic field by causing these cells to divide out of schedule. This one is very important here on the right. Noradrenaline release potentiated in a nerve cell line by low-intensity pulse magnetic fields. And this is the new area that's getting a lot of attention. It's actually illustrated in the next slide as well. Electromagnetic fields, biological influences. Electromagnetic fields exert effects on and through hormones. What are the function of hormones? Regulation of the body. What does it now reveal? High tension lines, cell phones, microwaves, they all influence the hormones of the body and then throw the body out of alignment by being in the field. Now it says, well, how come literature says that the high tension lines don't affect people? Because that's what the story was. And the answer is that data was skewed and incorrect, and they were required to do it again because there is an effect by electromagnetic fields on your biology. But here's the interesting little catch. If you are not under stress, the fields will not affect you. If you're under stress, the fields get very, very specific and can alter your biology. So the interesting thing, when they were doing the assays, nobody detected the difference between stressed and non-stressed individuals. Now it reveals that stress is the primary mechanism that opens your body to the exposure and changing of its function by electromagnetic fields. And especially estrogen is one of the highest responding hormones in the body to electromagnetic fields. And that's relevant because estrogen is involved with cell proliferation and cancer. So that there's a connection between the fields now. Now, the signals that come in, let's just stop. Let's end at this moment on that other section. What does it say? It says that signals control the biology, that conventional medicine only, as it said in the science article, recognizes molecules as the source of the signals, but quantum physics, which is the parent science, and all science have to adopt to the quantum physics, so biology has to adopt the physics and recognize what quantum physics says is that energy activates these receptors as well, but I don't have to convince you of that. I already have all the literature in the papers right now that energy does the same as molecules, so energy healing is not some kind of made-up thing or some kind of, being some quackery. Energy healing is real because energy is more effective in controlling biology than molecules are.